Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. This week, road racing is back. We've got veterans and first-year pros winning in Mallorca, plus big attacks at the Grand Prix La Marseillaise. We'll also look back at what was a fantastic weekend of racing at the UCI World Cyclocross Championships in Fayetteville and round up all the other racing-related news too. I'm going to start though with the first live European road race of the season, the Grand Prix La Marseillaise. How great is it to have pro racing back on our screens? And the conditions really couldn't have been better. Completely blue skies, showing off the beauty of southern France. Alberto Bettiol of EF Education Easy Post was the first rider to put in a serious attack. He blew the race apart up the Route de Crête with only a handful of riders able to stick with him on the steep gradients. Bettiol didn't include power data in his Strava upload, but Connor Swift did, and this handy infographic from Matti Piraili on Twitter shows just how hard it was. 459 watts for over 10 minutes for the Brit. Now he is around 77 kilograms, but still, that is a serious effort, and even that left him a little way off the pace. It did regroup though, over the top, but Diego Ulissi of UAE Team Emirates was on the attack and up the road. Trek Segafredo though controlling things behind with Mads Pedersen still in the group. Despite the best efforts of Ulissi, Guillaume Martin and others, a group of just under 50 riders came to the finish together. Trek and Total Energy took the bulk of the responsibility in the lead out, but the line came a few metres late for Pedersen, who was passed just before it by Arnaud Capiot of Arkea Samsic. The 28-year-old Belgium has been a pro since 2015, but that was his first ever victory. Chapeau. On to the Challenge Mallorca now, 5 back-to-back one-day races which produced some very exciting racing, I've got to say. The highlights of all 5 are now up on GCN Plus if you'd like to catch up, but I'll briefly run through each of them now. Brandon McNulty of UAE Team Emirates put in a monumental effort on the opening day at the Trofeo Calvia. He broke away with almost 60 Ks to go and managed to stay clear to the end. His new teammate, Joel Suter, who was only picked up by that team late last year after being let go by Bingo Power Sources, outsprinted Albanese of Yolo Cometa for second. Now, McNulty did upload his file to Strava, but as he points out here in his title for the ride, his power meter didn't work and he forgot his heart rate strap. So he won in spite of, or maybe because of, a lack of data. And it was a solid week for McNulty, who went on to finish second and fourth in his next 2 outings in Mallorca. On Thursday, we had a sprint finish with a brilliant and dominant win coming from Biniam Gourmet of Intermarché Wanty Gobert. We've long known the talent of this Eritrean youngster, but if that performance was anything to go by, he's gone up another level again over the winter months. This could be, and hopefully will be, a really big season for him. Now, it's rare that we get too far into the season before Tim Wellens of Lotto Soudal gets himself off the mark, and he did so on Friday at the Trofeo Serra de Tramantura. A really elite group of riders went clear on the Puig Mayor, climb I know that many of you know well. Wellens averaged 406 watts there for 33 minutes to be up there in an elite group that also contained Mas, Valverde, McNulty and Simon Clark, who's also had a brilliant start to the season. Wellens got into the last corner first and he didn't allow any room for Valverde to pass before the finish line. The Spaniard wasn't happy about it, but just 24 hours later, he could smile again. The 41-year-old won the uphill finish to the Port d'Andratx, getting the better of Vlasov and McNulty. 18 years since Valverde first won at the Challenge Mallorca, and he's showing little signs of slowing down. And then yesterday, we had a second sprint for the week, with 19-year-old neo-pro Arnaud Delis of Lotto Soudal getting the better of Sebastian Milano of UAE Team Emirates. In doing so, he became one of the youngest winners of a pro race in recent times. Valverde, incidentally, has been a pro longer than Arnaud Delis has been alive. Absolutely bonkers. On to cyclocross now, and a highly entertaining weekend over in Fayetteville where 6 world champions were crowned. I'll start with the elite races, and the first of those was the women's on Saturday. Vos and Brandt went into it as the clear favourites, and true to form, they were head and shoulders above the rest. It was the impetus of Brandt which saw them pull clear of the rest, but she soon became frustrated at the lack of help from Vos on what was a very fast course. Vos did eventually do some turns on the front, but as it became clear that nobody would get back to them, it became a game of cat and mouse. Attacks followed by near standstills. There was no separating them, and in that scenario, there's not much you can do against Vos. She is so canny and so fast, and once they reached the finish straight together, there was little doubt who was going to cross the line first. Vos taking her 8th World Cyclocross title 16 years after her first and 8 years after her last. Incredible. The longevity, the determination and the talent. She really is the greatest of all time. Here's what she had to say post-race.
How do you describe this feeling of pre and then in the final what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, of course then there's some nerves, but I knew everything was, I did everything what I had to do, and the team around me did all the preparation well, and then you just need to race, and of course everything can happen. So then the race itself was also very, very difficult to race. I mean, it's not often that you have so many tactics in a cyclocross race, but Lucinda is always hard to beat, and I knew I had to do all the right things, so I couldn't make any mistakes.
What a hero and inspiration she is to so many. Congratulations, Marianne Vos. In the men's, we were expecting a battle between Pidcock and Belgium, and that's exactly what we got, for the first few laps at least. But try as they did to fire riders off the front and catch Pidcock out, the Brit was wise to it all, never allowing himself to slip far enough back that he wouldn't be able to react to a move. And it was just before the midway point of the race that he made his own move. The short, steep bank had been causing havoc in lots of the races. He muscled his way into first position before it, and by the exit, a small gap had opened up behind him. And that, basically, was that. The small gap became a medium one and then large, and the rest soon had to resign themselves to the fact that they were fighting for the silver medal. Pidcock rode a flawless race throughout, never setting a foot wrong, and became the first ever British winner of an elite cyclocross world championships. Behind him, in the fight for silver, Lars van der Haar came out on top. The Dutchman's had a bit of a renaissance this season, and he managed to outsprint the man of the season, Elie Iserbyt. The Belgian team came with high hopes, and they did place 7 riders in the top 11 on the day, but there wasn't a lot more they could do with the form displayed by Pidcock on the day. The under-23 women's race was a corker. Park Pieterse, Fem van Empel and Shirin van Anrooy started as the pre-race favourites, and just like in the elite women's race, it played out true to form. The three of them were locked together in the latter half of the race, with the Van Empel looking particularly comfortable. However, it was that banking that once again made the difference. Van Empel forced to dismount and then remount both herself and her chain after Pieterse's back wheel flicked out at the top of it. That dashed the hopes of Van Empel in defending her title and left her 2 compatriots to fight it out. In the sprint to the line, it was incredibly close, but Pieterse just managed to keep her nose in front despite leading out Van Anrooy. She hasn't won a single race at all this season, despite some incredibly strong showings, but now she's a world champion. In the under-23 men's, we had a big battle between the Dutch and the Belgians. It was a course that favoured the brave in that situation, and the bravest rider was Joran Visura of Belgium. He attacked early, and with the Dutch taking a while to get themselves organised behind, he soon opened up a significant gap. His teammate, Emile Verstringer, got clear of the chase group later on in the race, but was unable to close the gap completely. A 1-2 for Belgium though, and Thibaut Nys made it a clean sweep of the podium spots by outsprinting Mace Hendricks and Cameron Mason for third. In the junior men's, David Harverdings of the Netherlands started as the clear favourite, having won almost every event he's entered this year. However, this crash on a descent saw him lose a lot of time, and with the course being so fast, it was always going to be nigh on impossible to make that time up. Up front, Nathan Smith of Great Britain, Aaron Dox of Belgium and Jan Christen of Switzerland fought it out for the medals. Christen looked to have the biggest engine, Dox the best at bike handling, while Smith was solid as a rock throughout. In the sprint though, the biggest engine shone through, with Christen taking gold. Now he's another multidiscipline rider who competed in road, track, mountain bike and cyclocross last year, and he's recently been on a training camp with UAE Team Emirates. They've clearly seen his potential, and I dare say it won't be long before we see him in the pro ranks on the road. In the junior women's, things were much more clear-cut. There was a little question mark over Zoe Bagsted's form after her recent break due to COVID, but that question mark quickly turned to an exclamation mark. She put in an attack that nobody had an answer to on the first climb on the first lap and wasn't seen again before the podium ceremony. That's a cyclocross rainbow jersey to add to the road one that she picked up last September in Belgium. What a phenomenal talent. This is how the medal table looked at the end of the weekend. The Dutch going home with 2 golds, 4 silvers and a bronze. Great Britain just behind them in second and Belgium in third. Not a medal table that I ever thought I'd see in the world of cyclocross. Just before I finish with the World Championships, I actually wanted to congratulate the organisation of the event. Brilliant weekend of racing, so thank you to all of you who contributed to that over in Fayetteville. But the cyclocross season is not done just yet. In fact, we've got 2 more races for you on GCN Plus this coming weekend. On Saturday, it's the next round of the Ethias Cross, and on Sunday, the next round of the X2 Badkammers Trophy from Lille. But this is also a really big week of racing on the road with 3 live stage races. Tomorrow is the first of 5 stages of the Saudi Tour. Lots of sprinters are headed there. Sam Bennett makes his return to the colours of Bora Hansgrohe with Danny van Poppel for support. Caleb Ewan starts his season there for Lotto Soudal and Dylan Groenewegen for Team Bike Exchange. Fernando Gaviria also there for UAE Team Emirates and Davide Ballerini for Quickstep Alpha Vinyl. That race is going to be available on GCN Plus throughout Europe, the Asia Pacific and the US. 2 stage races commence on Wednesday. We've got the Vuelta a la Comunitat Valenciana, also available on GCN Plus in all territories, and that has a stacked start list. Viviani, Jakobsen, Nizzolo, Christoph Milano and Walls are amongst the big name sprinters, whilst Evenepoel, Ayuso, Soyer, Mas, Kelderman, Valverde, Haig, Vlasov, Nibali, Gegenhardt and Fulsang are amongst the contenders for the overall classification. We've got a mountaintop finish up the Col de Rats on Friday, including a 2k section of gravel road at the top, which averages 9%, so don't miss that one. Valenciana also plays host to the start of the women's European season. They have a 1-day race on Sunday, which will also be live on GCN+. Now, unfortunately, details are scarce as we record this as to who's going to be racing there, but we do know that Movistar, UAE and Uno X are the World Tour teams competing. The Étoile de Bessèges in France runs from Wednesday through to Sunday, and yet more big names are competing there. Carapaz, Pinot, Ulissi, Mollema, Vine, Kwiatkowski, run out of fingers. Ackermann, Pedersen, Ganna, Cockart and Van Avermaet, amongst others, are all going to be on the start line. There are, though, more restrictions on that particular race, particularly actually here in Europe. We don't have rights in the UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, Norway and Denmark. Those of you in the rest of the world, though, including Australia, the US and Canada, will all be able to catch that live. Beyond all of that, we've also got live coverage of the next round of the ZRL Premier Division tonight on GCN Racing, and it's a team time trial, always a difficult one to get right. Coverage will start at 1900 GMT and it's free for all of you worldwide. Beyond the live and on-demand racing, you might also want to check out our latest Legends film this week. Bernie Eisel has been to Spain to pay a visit to Alberto Contador to talk about the ups and the downs of his career. That's going to be released tomorrow, Tuesday the 1st of February, and here's a quick trailer.
At the height of his career, Alberto Contador was the #1 stage racer on the planet. And he became only the 5th rider to win each of the Grand Tours.
But Contador's story is far richer than that. It has comebacks.
The race, the ambulance arrives to you in 50 seconds, 1 minute, no more. If I'm not there, maybe I'm not here.
Controversies.
If I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And I need fight until the end.
And epic rivalries.
For the sponsor and everything, it's better if Lance win the Tour de France, but not for me. I'm sorry. I'm 100% that I will try to win. We will go to this speed all time.
I was hoping for that. We keep going this way. Okay. See you at the top.
Head over to the GCN Plus section of the app from tomorrow if you'd like to watch that one in full. In other news, Davide Rebellin has finally announced his retirement from the sport, declaring last week that this will be his final year as a full-time bike rider. He is now 50 years old and he first started racing in the pro ranks in 1992, 8 years before Remco Evenepoel was even born. Many of the cycling headlines and stories last week, though, were centred around that horrific news that Egan Bernal had been involved in a very serious crash whilst training in Colombia. The news broke just after we released this show last Monday. Initial news suggested that he'd only got minor injuries, having crashed into the back of a bus. However, it soon emerged those injuries were extremely serious. He He underwent some delicate and complicated surgery on a multitude of injuries. We were all glued to social media hoping for good news from the hospital. Bernal actually took to social media himself late last week to say that he'd been told there was a 95% chance he'd become a paraplegic, thanking the specialist for doing the impossible. Floods of supportive messages had come in from all over the world last week. It was such shocking news, wasn't it? 1 minute you're talking about his prospects of winning big bike races, and the next you're just praying that he's able to lead a normal and healthy life in the future. Our thoughts and best wishes are with you, Egan, and we hope for further good news sooner rather than later. Irish cyclist Imogen Cotter was also involved in a nasty crash last week whilst training in Spain. She was hit by a motorist who was overtaking another cyclist in the opposite direction. The impact shattered her patella and also broke her arm and wrist. A GoFundMe page has been set up for her and it's already raised in excess of €20,000. We'll finish this week's racing news show though with some much nicer news, shall we? Peter Sagan came to the rescue of a cyclist last week. Scot Willie McColl was out riding in Gran Canaria and had the misfortune of puncturing 3 times on a single ride. Without any more spare tubes, he waited by the side of the road hoping to see a cyclist that could help. And then along came a group of pros that contained Sagan and Michael Gogol. They helped him get back on his way. How heartwarming is that? And with that, I shall bid you farewell. Join us tonight for the ZRL if you can, and indeed for the racing we've got coming up this week on GCN+. See you soon. Goodbye.